Hello everyone, welcome to another video on CSS. This is the second in series of video designed to teach you the CSS properties. In today's session, we will be covering CSS border image properties. CSS is all about emphasizing and decorating HTML elements, and one of the way to make your element noticeable is to add borders to it. And this video will help you to understand all the concepts about borders and how you can use custom borders to your element to emphasize its styling. And we are going to cover everything you need to know about CSS border properties. Also, kindly please take up time to subscribe and don't forget to hit the bell icon. So without much ado, let's get started. CSS borders. If you want to add emphasis to an element, then one option is to add borders. You can adjust the border style, width and color to get a variety of different looks. The border box directly surrounds the padding box and is usually used to represent the outer boundary of your content. As you can see from the image, every element has a space called border, and this space is used to add borders to your element. The border is generally present between margin and padding. The margin is the outer space of your element. It increases or decreases the space between two adjacent elements. Whereas padding is the inner space of an element. It increases or decreases the space between the content and the border. To set borders for all the sides of an element, you can use border width, border style and border color properties. And in this module, we will find out how to change the size, style and color of the borders using CSS. And there are three properties of border you can change. There is border color, border style and border width. And now we will see how to use these properties with examples. Border color property. The property border color will define the color of your border. Here you can give the color in any format like hexadecimal value, RGB or even in color name. This will set the color for all the four sides of your border. The name specifies the color name, for example red. You can use one of the 140 color names. Hex specifies the hex value of the color. And you can use hexadecimal color codes. And you can use RGB color codes. The first value is for red, the second value is for green, and third value is for blue. Each of them can have a value between 0 and 255. You can use rgba color codes. The first three values for RGB and fourth values for alpha channel, which defines the opacity of the color. The alpha value can go from 0 to 1, 0 for transparent and 1 for opaque. You can also use HSL color values. The first values for hue and can go from 0 to 359. The second value is for saturation and can go from 0% to 100%. The third value is for luminosity and can go from 0% to 100%. You can use HSLA color values. The first three values are for HSL and the fourth value is for alpha channel and defines the opacity of the color. The alpha value can go from 0 to 1, 0 for transparent and 1 for opaque. The transparent keyword applies the transparent color to the borders, and the borders will still take up the space defined by the border width value. The formal syntax for CSS border color property is given here. The property value includes color, transparent, initial and inherit. The value color specifies the border color. The default color is the current color of an element. The transparent keyword specifies that the border color should be transparent. The value initial will set this property to its default value. The inherit value will inherit this property from its parent element. And here is an example for border color property which specifies the color of four borders. You can individually change the color of the top, right, bottom, left sides of an element's border using these properties. Border top color changes the color of the top border. Border right color changes the color of the right border. Border bottom color changes the color of the bottom border. And the border left color will change the color of left border. And here is an example for different border colors. And this example will set different colors for all the four sides of your border. This property can have from 1 to 4 values. If 4 values are defined, they represent the top, right, bottom and left respectively. If three values are given, it represents top, left and right respectively. If two values are defined, then the first value represents top and bottom border colors and the second represents right and left border colors. If only one value is defined, then it is applied to all the sides of an element. And take a look at this example defined by different border color values. Border style property. The property border style is used to define the border around your element. This property will specify what type of border to display. And this is the formal syntax for border style property. And these are the possible values you can use to set the border style property. Let's take a quick look at them. Dotted specifies the dotted border. So the border looks like a series of dots. Dashed is used to define the dashed border and it is a series of short lines. Solid specifies a solid border. The border looks like a single solid line. Double is used to define two borders with same border width value. So the border has two solid lines. Groove defines 3D grooved border. The effect is generated according to the border color value. The border looks as though it is carved into the page. A ridge defines a 3D ridged border. The effect is generated according to the border color value. The border looks the opposite of groove. Inset defines a 3D inset border. The effect is generated according to the border color value. Border makes the box look like it is embedded in the page. Outset defines a 3D outset border. The effect is generated according to the border color value. That is, the border makes the box look like it is coming out of the canvas. None, it doesn't define any border. So no border, equivalent of border with value 0. Hidden, same as none, except in terms of border conflict resolution for table elements. Initial will set this property to its default value. Inherit will inherit its property from its parent element. And this example shows all these border styles. And it will produce the following result. You can individually change the style of left, top, right and bottom borders of an element using the following properties. Border bottom style changes the style of bottom border. Border top style changes the style of top border. Border left style changes the style of left border. Border right style changes the style of right border. Here is an example to show different border styles on each side of an element. This property can have from 1 to 4 values. If the property has 4 values like dotted, solid, double and dashed, the top border is dotted, the right border is solid, the bottom border is double and left border is dashed. If the property has 3 values like dotted, solid and double, the top border is dotted, the right and left border are solid and the bottom border is double. If property has 2 values like dotted and solid, the top and bottom border are dotted and right and left borders are solid. If property has only one value like dotted, all 4 borders are dotted. This example shows how an elements look like if we apply different values to them. Border width property. The property border width will define the width of your border. It is used to give your border a particular thickness. The value of this property could be either a length in pixel, point or centimeter, or it should be set to thin, medium or thick. We will see the CSS units like rems, ems, VH, that is views port height and views port width in a separate video. The width of a border is how thick a line is and it is controlled by border width property. The default border width is medium and this won't be visible unless you define a style. The formal syntax for border width property. It includes the property values like medium, thick, thin, length, initial and inherit. The value medium defines a medium border. This is the default value. The value thin specifies a thin border. The value thick specifies a thick border. The value length allows you to define a thickness of the border. The value initial sets this property to its default value. The value inherits this property from its parent element. And here is an example for border width property. Always declare the border style property before the border width property. That is, an element must have borders before you can set the width. And this is the output for the border width property with different thickness. You can individually change the width of the top, border, left, right borders of an element using the following properties. The border bottom width changes the width of bottom border. The border top width changes the width of top border. The border left width changes the width of left border. And border right width changes the width of right border. And this example shows an element having a different specific side widths. Like border style property, the border width property can have 1 to 4 values. Each value specifies the width for each side of an element. For example, if 4 values are provided, they will be applied to the top, right, bottom and left borders in that order. If 3 values are given, then it is applied to top, left and right and bottom in that order. If 2 values are given, then the first value will change the width of top and bottom border, while second value will change the width of left and right border. If only one value is given, then it will set the width for all the 4 sides of the border. And here is an example of border width property with 4 different types of syntax. You might have noticed that all borders above are in rectangular shape. What if I want the vertices to be round? You can do that using border radius property. Just like border width property, you can use any unit for size. This property defines the radius of an element's corner. So with this property, you can add rounded corners to elements. This property will add a consistent border to each corner of your box. Note the 4 values for each radius are given in the order top left, top right, bottom left. For example, if bottom left is omitted, it is same as top right. If bottom right is omitted, it is same as top left. Similarly, if top right is omitted, it is same as top left. This is the formal syntax for border radius property. The property value length defines the shape of the corner. The default value is 0. Percent defines the shape of corners in percent. The value initial sets this property to its default value. The value inherits this property from its parent element. Here is a sample coding for border radius property. And in this example, we have set a rounded corners for an element. Or you could use a larger radius such as border radius equals 100 pixel to create a pill shape. When working with square elements, you can use the border radius value to 50% to create a circle. And the border radius can also be used when there is no border. Also notice this example. In this we have given the border radius in EM units. For example, the border radius equals 2m/5m. Then all the 4 borders will possess the radius of 2m's and 5m's. By defining a single value for a corner, you are using another shorthand because the border radius is split into 2 parts, the vertical and the horizontal sides. Slash symbol is used to define the elliptical values. This symbol will enable you to get creative and some complex shapes. For example, the border radius equals 2m, 1m and 4m slash 0.5m and 3m. The border top left radius will possess 2m and 0.5m. Border top right radius will have 1m and 3m. Border bottom right radius will have 4m and 0.5m. Border bottom left radius will have 1m and 3m. You can define the border radius for each side with border top left radius, border top right radius, border bottom right radius and border bottom left radius. This shorthand adds a consistent border to each corner of your box. So you can specify each corner radius in this shorthand. In this example, we have given the different radius for the specific sides. This property can have from 1 to 4 values. If 4 values are given, the first value is applied to the top left corner, the second value applied to the top right corner, and the third value is applied to the bottom right corner, and the fourth value is applied to bottom left corner. If three values are given, the first value is applied to top left corner, the second value is applied to top right and bottom left corners, and the third value is applied to bottom right corner. If two values are given, the first value is applied to top left and bottom right corners, and the second value is applied to top right and bottom left corners. If only one value is given, then the value is applied to all four corners, which are rounded equally. And here's an example for four different types of syntaxes. Now let's move on to border property. For adding border to your element, border style property is compulsory one, without which border will not occur. Whereas border width and border color can be used as per the programmer's need. The border property is a shorthand property for border width, border style, and border color property. With CSS border property, you can define the width, style, and color of the border. While using border shorthand property, the order is important. You have to define from width, style, and color. So with this property, you can set all the properties at once. This is the formal syntax for border property. The value border width specifies the width of the border. The default value is medium. The value border style specifies the style of the border. The default value is none. The border color specifies the color of the border. The default value is the color of the text. The value initial sets this property to its default value. So the default value was medium, none, and color. And the value inherit will inherit this property from its parent element. And in this example, we have set all the properties at once using the border shorthand property. You just don't have to use a stroke-based border in CSS. You can also use any type of image as a border. So with CSS border image property, you can specify an image to be used instead of normal border around an element. This property has three parts: the image to be used as a border, where to slice the image, and define whether the middle section should be repeated or stretched. Now let's see the border image property in detail. The CSS border image property is used to add image as a border to some elements. The border image property takes the image and slices into 9 sections like a tic-tac-toe board. Then it places the corners at the corners, and the middle sections are repeated or stretched as you specify. For border image to work, you also need to set the border property for an element. In figure 1, here the middle section of the image is repeated to create a border. In figure 2, the middle section of an image is stretched to create a border. This shorthand property allows you to set the source image and image to be sliced, and set the image width and how far the border is outset from the edge and how it should be repeated. The border image property is actually a shorthand property for the properties like border image source, border image slice, border image width, border image outset, and border image repeat. In this example, the middle section of the image is repeated as well as stretched to create a border. The border image property with different slice value will completely change the look of the border, and you can see here. This is the formal syntax for border image property. The border image source is used to set the image path. The border image slice is used to slice the border image. Border image width is used to set the border image width. The border image repeat is used to repeat the border image as rounded, repeated, and stretched. The border image outset property sets the distance by which an element's border image is set out from its border box. Initial will set this property to its default value. Inherit will inherit this property from its parent element. In this example, we are replacing the border of the paragraph element with the image. In first paragraph, we are specifying a single value, that is round, whereas in second paragraph, we are specifying two values, that is round and stretched of it. The first value is for horizontal sides and second value for vertical sides. Border image source property. This property specifies the source of the border image. It sets the path of the image, or we can say that it specifies the location of the image to be used as a border. This is the formal syntax for border image source property. If the value is none or if the image is not displayed, the border style will be used. The value none specifies no image will be used. As I mentioned earlier, if we apply the value none, no border image is used. Instead, border style will be used. The value image specifies the path of an image. The value initial sets this property to its default value. The value inherits its property from its parent element. Here is a basic example for border image source property. Border image slice property. The border image slice property is a useful property that allows you to slice an image into 9 parts made up of 4 split lines. It works like margin shorthand where we define the top, right, bottom and left offset values. This property is used to divide or slice the image which is specified by border image source property. And the values of this property specify how to slice the image for creating the pieces of border. The image is always sliced into 4 sections which includes 4 corners, 4 edges and the middle part. The middle part is treated as fully transparent unless the fill keyword is set. Look at this example. With the offset values defined, now we have 9 sections of image, 4 corners, 4 edges and a middle section. The corners are applied to the corners of the element with the border image and the edges are applied to the edges of that element. The border image slice property can take from 1 to 4 values to represent the position of each image slice. The negative values are invalid and the values greater than their corresponding dimensions are clamped to 100%. If there is only one component value, it is applied to all the sides. If there are 2 values, the top and bottom are set to the first value and the right and left are set to the second value. If there are 3 values, the top is set to the first value and left and right are set to the second and bottom is set to third. If there are 4 values, then it is applied to top, right, bottom and left respectively. This is a formal syntax for border image slice property. The number represents the pixels in image if the image is raster image or vector coordinates if the image is a vector image. Percentages are relative to the size of the image, the width of the image for horizontal offset, the height for vertical offsets. If fill keyword is present, it causes the middle part of the border image to be preserved. By default, it is discarded, that is, it is treated as empty. Initial will set this property to its default value. Inherit will inherit this property from its parent element. Look at this example. In this, the border image slice property have the value of 10, 20 and 30. The dimensions are 30 pixel across, therefore setting 30 pixel as the value for border image slice will get you complete and fairly crisp dimensions in your border. Varying this away from 30 causes the border to look somewhat irregular but can have some interesting effects. Border image width property. This property will set the width of the border image. The border image width property is used in conjunction with border image source, border image slice, border image outset, and border image repeat properties in order to determine how the image will appear on the border. This property is used for specifying offsets that are used to divide the border image area into 9 parts, that is 4 corners, 4 edges, and the middle. These width values represents inward distance from the top, right, bottom and left sides of the area respectively. If the left width is missing, it is same as the right. If the bottom is missing, it is same as the top. And if the right is missing, it is same as top. The border image is drawn inside the area called border image area. This is an area whose boundaries by default corresponds to the border box. This property takes up to 4 values. When 4 values are specified, the width is applied to top, right, bottom and left in that order. The order is always clockwise. When 3 values are specified, the first value is applied to top, the second is applied to left and right, and third to bottom. When 2 values are specified, the first is applied to top and bottom, and second is applied to left and right. When only one value is specified, it is applied to all the 4 sides. Here is an example for border image width property with 4 values. And this example creates a border image which is 20 pixel on each side. This is the formal syntax for border image width property. The length unit specifies the size of the border width. The number specifies the width of the border. It represents the multiples of corresponding border width. And it must not be negative and the default value is 1. Percent refers to the size of the border image area, that is the width of the area for horizontal offset and height for vertical offset. If the value is auto, the border width is made equal to the intrinsic width and height of the corresponding border image slice property. Initial will set this property to its default value. Inherit will inherit this property from its parent element. Here is an example for border image width property with different values. Border image outset property. The border image outset property sets the distance by which an element's border image is set out from its border box. And this property is also used in conjunction with other border image properties. This property can take from 1 to 4 values. When 4 values are specified, the outsets are set on the top, right, bottom and left sides in that order. If 3 values are specified, the first is applied to top, the second is applied to left and right, and third to bottom. If 2 values are specified, the first value is applied to top and bottom, and the second to left and right. If only 1 value is specified, it is applied to all the 4 sides. And here is the formal syntax for border image outset property. A length is the size of the border image outset as a dimension, and it is a number with unit. That is, the length value specifies a fixed amount, for example 1 m. The value number represents the multiples of border width. For example, if an element has border width as 1 m, 2 pixel, 0 and 1.5 rems, and the border image outset is set to 2, the final border image outset would be calculated as 2 m's, 4 pixel, 0 and 3 rems. The initial will set this property to its default value. Inherit will inherit this property from its parent element. The example of border image outset property. For outsetting the border image, we have specified some value to the border image outset property so that the border image area is extended beyond the border box on all 4 sides. Border image repeat property. This property is used for defining how the images for the middle part and sides of the border are scaled and tiled. And this property can be used in conjunction with other border image properties. This property specifies whether and how the border image should be repeated, rounded or stretched. And this property defines how the edge region of image is adjusted to fit the dimensions of an element's border image. This property can take from 1 to 2 values. When only 1 value is specified, it is applied to all 4 sides. When 2 values are specified, the first value is applied to top and bottom, and the second value is applied to left and right. The formal syntax for border image repeat property. The initial value is stretch, which stretches the source image to fill the available space where possible. The repeat value tiles the source image edges as many times as possible and may clip the edge regions to achieve this. The round value is same as repeat. Instead of clipping the image edge regions to fit as many as possible, it will stretch the image as well as it will repeat it to achieve the seamless repeat. If the image does not fill the area with whole number of tiles, the image is rescaled. The space value is again the same as repeat, but this value adds space between each edge regions to create a seamless pattern. If the image does not fill the area with whole number of tiles, the extra space is distributed around the tiles. Initial will set this property to its default value. Inherit will inherit this property from its parent element. And here is an example for border image repeat property with stretch, repeat, round and space values. And also you can notice in the output that we have used 2 values, that is stretch and repeat. When 2 values are specified, the first value stretch is applied to top and bottom, and the second value repeat is applied to right and left. And with this we have come to the end of the session. Thank you so much for watching, and please do subscribe our channel.